Hello and welcome to the Creative Writing Live podcast, where we talk with writers from all mediums and genres about themselves, their work, and advice they have for writers. I'm your host, Paul Zeidman, and my guest today is author Lynn C. Miller. We're going to be talking about her new book, The Surrogate. Lynn C. Miller, welcome to the Creative Writing Live podcast.
Thank you, Paul. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I am very happy to have you here. And for those who are familiar with the show, we like to start things off talking about anything we may have read or watched recently. If we liked it, we didn't like it, or totally indifferent to it. I will go first just to give Lynn a little time to collect her thoughts. Last week was very busy. I had some time off and I was taking care of a whole bunch of things. So not as much time to watch things, but my wife introduced me to this show. It's got several international versions now, but the one we started watching, it's called Last One Laughing. And they take, I believe it's 10 comedians, and they put them in this room for 6 hours. And their job is to make the other contestants laugh, but they can't laugh themselves. And if they laugh, they get, I think, one warning. And then if they laugh again, they are kicked out. So, and it's some of it is very funny. And part of the comedy comes from watching them try to not laugh at what someone else is saying, and some of them have actually broken up at things that they have said themselves. So
Oh, that's great.
and so that was the British one. There's also one based out of Canada. I think there's an American one, but my wife said that one was not very good. But the British one we watched, that was very entertaining, and they just started the second season, so it's called Last One Laughing. I think we watched it on YouTube or no, Amazon. Amazon. I'm sorry, it's on Amazon.
Okay.
So if anyone wants to track that down, that's where they can go. And that's pretty much all I've been able to watch the past week. So,
Well,
Lynn,
the
what about
British are
you?
the funniest.
They are. They're very funny and it's very adult. So, definitely not one for the whole family to sit around and watch.
Right.
But it was very entertaining and liked it a lot. So, Lynn, what about you?
Well, I just read a novel that I thought was really creative, different, and wonderful by Matt Haig, who wrote The Midnight Library. It's called How to Stop Time.
Hmm.
And it has the intriguing premise that a very small part of the population lives for approximately 950 years. But they live in our world where
Hmm.
everybody else, dies usually under 100 years. And so the whole crux of the book is how this person can function in this world where he never ages, but everyone ages around him.
Hmm.
And how does he fall in love and have a relationship given that he knows they're going to die and he is not going to change? And it's pretty fascinating. And it goes through all these different ages. Like he meets Shakespeare and works with him
Hmm.
and plays the lute at the Globe Theater. I mean, it's very creative, and I recommend it.
No, I love the title. It's just so unique too.
Yeah, it
It's
was very
a,
good.
and also you can't go wrong with something that, spans a long stretch of time as well, especially, watching it from the immortal, so to speak, point of view.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right, fantastic stuff. All right, so again, we are talking to Lynn C. Miller and her new book, The Surrogate. What I like to do is I like to read the about the author section from the book, and I'm going to actually edit this one down because it's almost an entire page. So Lynn C. Miller's most recently publication is The Lost Archive, a book of short stories, a bronze medalist for short story collections in 2024 in the Forward Indies Awards, and a gold medalist in the Midwest Independent Publishers Awards. She's published four novels. Her third, The Day After Death, was named a 2017 Lambda Literary Award finalist in lesbian fiction. And I'm jumping down to the bottom. Hiking and swimming are favorite pastimes, as is exploring the great outdoor spaces of the West. She is co-publisher of Bosque Press and lives in Los Ranchos, New Mexico. So, Lynn C. Miller, let's talk a little bit about you. What is your writer's origin story? Were you always a writer, even from a young age? Were you a voracious reader? Was writing something you came to later in life and you said, you know what, I'm going to give this a try, and hey, I've actually got some skills at it?
Well, I'm kind of an always writer. When I was 9, my family moved from Chicago to the family farm in North Dakota, which was really isolated.
Hmm.
And that's when I started writing short stories. It was like had to leave all my friends behind. I moved to this farm. I didn't know anyone. And so that's when I became both a voracious reader and haunted the library
Hmm.
and also started writing. So that's been kind of a given in my life. And then when I was in college, I got very involved in literature and theater. And I have to say that performance has informed my writing a lot. And so that's been a huge influence, and film. And
Hmm.
I know you're very interested in film and write
Yeah.
about screenwriting, so that's
True.
cool.
I have to ask, so how would you say performance has influenced your writing? Because they're two very different things, because you can write a script for actors, but you can also write a novel or write a piece of fiction that it's more, you can visualize it in your imagination.
Well, my field involved adapting fiction for the stage. That was kind of my
Hmm.
specialty. And so I would take usually a short story or a novel, and I would adapt it for the stage with various characters, and I would keep the narration as a character also. So when I say it influenced my writing, I really, first of all, got very involved in the visual presentation of character and space
Hmm.
and setting. And as in film, how objects take on meaning. I mean, that's true in theater as well as film, that the props, the costumes, all of those things add to the audience experience. So I would have to say that I learned how to take apart a story by adapting it for the stage. And that taught me a lot as a writer myself of how really good stories work, how characters developed, how people talk in different ways.
Hmm.
So those are some of the things that made a big difference for me, learning how to be a better writer.
Sure, sure. So what was it that led you from, I guess, writing for more performative presentations to straight out just, writing books and novels and fiction?
Well, I have written some plays, but fiction was kind of my first love, even as a kid. And so then in my role in the theater department, I was adapting fiction rather than performing
Hmm.
plays, although I have directed some plays, but I mostly directed things that I had adapted, in some cases poetry also for the stage. And so how did I get there, you know? Um, they sort of morphed into each other, I guess. I mean, my love of literature brought me into adapting it for the stage because I wanted people to be able to see and hear it and be involved in the way that you are when you have that kind of presentation.
Sure, sure. That makes a lot of sense. So, what was it that led you to, it seems like you still work with plays and performing in a certain capacity, but what was it that kind of shifted your focus more towards books and novels?
I would say that I had published short stories fairly early on, but I didn't publish my first novel was actually my fourth novel. And I remember taking a class from a novelist, and he said the average author writes three or four novels before they get one published.
Hmm.
So I have some moldering novels on shelves somewhere, deep in my computer. But anyway, so I really wanted to write a longer form piece of fiction.
Hmm.
And I loved, I just love novels. I would have to say that of all the things I read, I'm always reading one or two novels and even though I read a lot of other things. So I wanted, I guess I harbored a secret desire to be a novelist.
Hmm.
So that shifted me. And the other thing that did is I did a lot of directing in my career when I was teaching, and I did also some solo performances of famous women. I would do monologues in Chautauquas. Are you familiar with Chautauqua?
I am familiar with Chautauqua.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I did the Chautauqua circuit, and I got kind of tired of the travel and all of that. And so I
Hmm.
thought, I like the idea of having more control over my schedule and my creative life by being able to write a novel because it's all about what's in your head.
Hmm.
So I don't know, there were some practical things, but really I have always admired novels and wanted to write them. So,
Okay, that's great. I love the idea. Also, I think when you're traveling a lot, and you also like the idea, well, if I could be the writer who is, people are coming to see, that that
yeah.
puts a whole different perspective on it. So let's get into talking about your book, The Surrogate. Sorry, a novel, The Surrogate. I'd like to ask guests. So, what would you say? For screenwriting, it's the elevator pitch, that 5 to 10 second. Here's what my story is. But for authors, it's usually more of the cocktail party pitch. And so you meet someone at a cocktail party, and they say, "Oh, Lynn, tell me about your novel, The Surrogate, and what's it about?" And you would say,
I would say that, first of all, it's a family drama set during the Great Recession. So most of the action is 2007 to 2010. So we have the financial crisis as a backdrop for the loss that the family feels when they lose their younger son in a car wreck. So the family is grieving, and I'll tell you more about the family later because it's an interesting blended family.
hmm
But so I guess the second elevator pitch would be that a charming stranger comes into this family after the death of the son and sort of charms his way into this interesting family.
Yeah, I was going to say that there are multiple subplots and storylines throughout, and the protagonist Alex is really the focal point of the whole thing. Not that she's the one driving the story, but a lot of the activity takes place around her, and sometimes
Right.
she's reacting, and sometimes she's causing things to happen. But I have to say, so. What was the inspiration for the story? Because you said, it takes place during the Great Recession, but it's about this family. Did you have an idea? Okay, I want to write a story about a family, but I need what feels right to me for the best setting, so to speak.
Well, what actually happened is that I was driving around in my car and it was something like, I don't know, the 10th anniversary of Lehman Brothers failing. And I
Okay.
was listening to a program and they were interviewing all of these Lehman Brothers people who packed their cardboard boxes that day,
hmm
September 15th, back then, 2008. But anyway, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's what my novel needs is a loss that's palpable, like money. People
hmm
were losing their homes, they were losing their jobs, they were losing their financial independence. And this family has lost sort of the golden boy of the family. So it just struck me that the financial crisis sort of segued into the family crisis.
hmm
And one of the major characters is a stockbroker who invests his family's money and loses a great deal of it. So I don't know. I was listening to this program with these Lehman Brothers people, and I went, that's when I want to set the book.
hmm
I'd already started the book, but I was kind of stuck.
I was just about to ask, did you already have the concept of the story for the family, but you needed some kind of like a through line, like some
Yes,
kind of something to really influence the story overall?
that's right. Yeah. Yeah, I was writing the book. I knew about the charming stranger. I knew about the two families that are linked. And but I didn't have sort of the time period and the setting. And I wanted something that was risky. And I think the
Hmm.
for those of us who remember that recession, it was risky. I mean, all kinds of things were happening, and people were pretty panicked, and it just gave the novel more consequence, I felt.
Well, I also think that because family is such a key component of the entire story, that a lot of times when we see these big news stories, we don't really think about the ramifications or the effects that it has on individuals. And this is almost like taking a microscope to, okay, here's one, extended family, so to speak, and here's how this big event, yes, everyone knows what happened, but here's how it affected this one group in particular.
Yes, yes, right.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
really.
I felt like it really underscored the feelings of loss
Mhm.
and risk and all of those things that happen when your life is turned upside down, as theirs was.
Right. Right. I was going to say, I'm not going to call it the tale of a dysfunctional family because they're not really, because they actually really get along well with each other, but maybe more like slightly semi-dysfunctional. Now,
Yes.
was it challenging for you to develop the relationships that our protagonist, Alex, that she has with the other members of her family? Because she has interactions with pretty much everybody. She has her parents and her aunt and uncle, and also her cousin, and also there's also her, circle of friends that everybody has a slightly different, or she has a slightly different relationship with each person. Now, did it take time to develop that, or did you kind of go into it thinking, okay, this is my main protagonist, and this is how she is with everybody?
Well, as you know, I made her a psychologist,
Mm,
and so she is conveniently very interested in people's behavior and personalities. And so she's kind of the spider at the center of the web in that
mm,
sense, that she is interested in everyone's motivations. And she was much closer to the cousin who died than the one who is still living, who is a rather difficult person, the first half of the book especially. And so she really, her interest kind of drove a lot of the dramatic encounters among the characters. And then I also kind of thought up some ideal parents in this story.
hmm
The two sets of parents are quite delightful in their ways. And because people have asked me, are those your parents? And I said, no.
I was going to ask because a lot of time with screenwriting, there is some aspect of the writer's personality in almost every character, whether it's the main
Yes.
character or some supporting character. Now, how similar would you say that Alex is to you? Not necessarily in career, but more like personality type. And or are there aspects of your personality that you wanted to try and instill in her? Like this is how I am, so this is how she's going to be.
Yeah, I love that. I'm not really as much of a watcher as Alex. I think I mean, I am observant and I'm interested in how people tick, but Alex is happy to take a back seat a lot of the time and just read the room.
Hmm.
And that's a part of me, but then there's another part of me that very much loves uh, to converse and meet people and get to know them. And so there's that. But I do think in this book that there are fragments of me in several of the characters. And so, for instance, the Rolf character who dies on the first page, there's some things about him that I certainly identify with. That he is, oh, he's funny and he likes to please people, but he also is interested in the arts and,
hmm
various things. And then even the crabby brother, I feel like we can all relate to him because he's very critical and discerning.
hmm
Uh, but he also has good boundaries, which I like.
hmm
So I don't know. I had a lot of fun with these characters.
I was going to say, said people have asked you, are these what your parents are like? And it's almost like, no, I took my parents and then totally flipped it around. It's a total reversal of what my parents are like, which makes you think, oh my gosh, poor Lynn. Because the parents in the book are very, very supportive and they're very friendly with their daughter, but also the aunt and uncle. It's not that it's just an extended family. They get along very, very well, which to a certain extent was almost surprising because you
Yeah.
don't expect the relationships to be that solid in a book with family, especially with such turbulent times like surrounding them.
Well, I early on got the idea to make the two mothers, twins,
Hmm
and that they married two men who were best friends. So the four of them have all these connections. The sisters have known each other all their lives.
Right.
And as Alex says, they talk almost every day. They're very, even though they're totally different personalities, the two sisters, they're very close. And then the two men also are close. So that was convenient, that they know each other so well and for so long. Um, And I kind of enjoyed that too. I like twinning. I have another book in which I have twins. There's something very interesting about that Gothic tradition of twinning.
I was going to say, it's tough to, because conflict is a key component of any story. It's tough to have characters who all get along. You have to think, okay, what can the conflicts be? And a
Right.
lot of the times, in that case, it would have to be from an outside source. In that case, you have double, because you said you have the financial crisis, but you also have the charming stranger who comes into their lives as well. And so, was that something you made a point of trying to develop more? I mean, you said you got inspiration from the financial crisis, but what? And I think you said that the charming stranger was something you wanted to introduce, but was that the initial plan, or is that something that developed as you were putting the all of the details together?
Yeah, good question. Actually, the man who comes into their lives was sort of the building block for the whole thing because my mom, I did lose a sibling who was young, and my mom made really a strong friendship with a young man the same age as my brother after my brother died. And that was kind of the inspiration for the story, is that they became truly family over the years. They knew
Hmm.
each other for many decades till my mom died. And I always thought there was something very interesting there of how obviously she did not replace my brother in any way, but they bonded over this event, and her friend also had known my brother well, and so that was kind of the kernel of the story, that there would be another person who came into the family after the death of the young son. And that was the first thing that came before the crash.
Hmm.
So I had the title, The Surrogate, and I had that kernel of someone who he doesn't insinuate himself with the family. He's genuinely interested in them. Um, but I had him, but I didn't have some of the other important pieces.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I was going to say that there's a lot of, I don't want to call them plot twists, but there are a lot of the way that a lot of the subplots were playing out. A lot of them did not take the turn that I was expecting. That
Okay.
sometimes that a character would do something that was totally caught me off guard, and I thought, okay, now I'm really intrigued to see how this is going to play out because I guess because I've been uh, so I'm so used to how it usually goes in a lot of other works that it was surprising to not have that particular thing happen. And I was like, okay, now I'm really intrigued to see, okay, this is not what I was expecting, so let's see where this goes. And
Yes,
it and
yes.
things kept getting more complicated as it went on, but we don't do spoilers on this show. Uh, I also wanted to ask, so the story is set in New Mexico to the extent that almost the location practically becomes a character, a supporting character, because you mentioned a lot of the geography. I believe it's Albuquerque.
Yes.
Okay, so you mentioned a lot of the streets and some of the locations, and I know you have experience. I'm guessing you're very familiar with Albuquerque. Uh, why was it important to you to include so many of these kinds of details? I mean, not just geographically, but you talk about they were watching the sunset and what the sky was looking like. I mean, was it a deliberate on your part to include that to not just create the world, but also to set up that this is the life that these characters have?
Yeah, I think setting is a really important part of any, and again, maybe that's from studying theater and film also for me. I think setting really makes everything come alive. And the uncle, for instance, is very involved with New Mexico history, and he's interested in the ruins, the Puebloan ruins, and sort of the geographical history of the state. And it is an interesting state. There are, because of the tricultures,
Hmm.
and it's a very old state. It has communities since that have been continuously occupied since 800 AD, which is a long time for this country.
Hmm.
So I guess I'm kind of intrigued with New Mexico. I'm somewhat of a newcomer here. I moved here in 2007, but they're I felt like it grounded the characters that they were either involved in, hiking in the mountains or playing tennis outside. They're interested in the geography, and also in this book, the change of seasons
Mm,
matters when things happen. Ralph dies in the spring, and then Nathaniel enters their lives in the fall when everything is getting golden from the cottonwoods and et cetera. And then the next year we start having the crisis. So the seasons are kind of turning along with everything. But yes, I think that in this book particularly, I got very engrossed in sort of the backdrop, the canvas
hmm.
against which the story played.
Right, right. Yeah, I totally got that because I was thinking that it's not like you could easily pick up the story and move it to a different location, like Central Florida or, the
Yeah,
Pacific Northwest, because it would be so much different that way. But it's almost like the story fits the setting.
good. That's great. That's what I wanted.
I do want to go
Thank
back.
you.
Of course, of course. I want to go back to talking about the storylines and the subplots. As you were mapping things out, okay, you had the charming stranger aspect, then you have the background of the financial crisis. As you were mapping out all of the different subplots, were a lot of those details already in place? Did it take you time to develop, or sometimes were there situations where you were writing something and think, okay, this is just not working, or I'm not really sure how this is going to play out? Would you have to backtrack, or would you kind of like, okay, I'm just going to let this sit for about a week. I'm going to let it simmer in the back of my head and come back to it and see what I come up with. I mean, what was your process for putting all of the different storylines and subplots together?
Oh, that's interesting. Um, Definitely. Well, I always get stuck writing a novel, I'll get to the middle and then I'm totally stuck. So this particular novel, I was fortunate enough that my publisher, the University of Wisconsin Press, sent the book out to reviewers. And so the first polished version ended completely differently than this one
Hmm.
because the reviewers were got very invested in how they thought the book should end, and they gave me some really great ideas. So I have to say that one of the things that drove me was that Alex, who is 30 when the book begins, is kind of at a turning point in her life. She
Hmm.
really is. And then she loses her dear cousin who was so close to her. And she really is caught in a emotional storm. And so that really drove the story for me. What kind of person is she? What would she choose? She's confused about her sexuality. She's not sure about so many things.
Hmm.
She is sure about her profession, so that's good. And she does have her solid family, but she is kind of vulnerable. She's very vulnerable. And so when she meets the charming stranger, she's charmed,
Hmm.
you know. But so I'd have to say I had lots of fits and starts with this book, and that it ended very differently than I thought it was going to end, which often happens. I mean,
I
you know,
was going to say, so the drastic change from your original ending, was that something you came up with, or was that maybe some reader's notes and said, "Oh, how about this?" And you thought, "Oh, that's what made it click," and all the pieces fell into place, or was it like a combination of things? And also, if without getting into spoiler territory, like how different was the ending that's in the book, which incidentally, Surrogate by Lynn C. Miller. How different was your original ending from what the ending is now?
well, it's quite different. And I don't think I want to say the ending because it would kind of wreck the book. And you said you don't want to do spoilers, but
Right.
but um, yes, people change quite a bit in the book,
Hmm.
and Alex has to make certain choices. And when I had written that first polished draft that I sent off to the publisher, I was I was kind of dubious about the ending. I thought it could go either one of these two ways.
Hmm.
And I chose one, but I was bothered by it. So then when a couple of the reviewers were bothered by it, I discussed this with my editor and I decided this is not the way Alex would decide her life. And so I kind of explored this other direction and I liked how it worked. So, but I don't think it's unusual that a story runs away with you. I
Okay.
think that I think that happens a lot, you know?
Oh yeah, well, sometimes that you're working and you have an end up for screenwriting, you know what the ending is going to be, or at least you
Yeah,
should. And so, but sometimes I've had writers who are like, this is the ending I originally had in mind, but as I was writing it, I came up with this better way of doing it, or it's something like the total opposite of that. And so, it's not surprising to hear a writer say that the ending that I ended up with is not the one I started out with. So.
that's right. That's
That
right.
is reassuring.
Yeah.
I think we also talked about earlier that, as you Stephen said, it's on page one is that the death of Alex's cousin. You set that up straight out from the get-go. Was that part of your original plan? Because I think you said you wanted to write a book about a family in crisis. Did it take you time to figure out what exactly would that crisis be, or would it be how does this family, everybody gets along for the most part? How do they deal with the death of, as you said, the golden boy of the one family?
Yeah. That was the kernel of the story. I knew all along that the death of the son would cause everything else to
Hmm.
happen, and that it would immediately cause the older son, who's still alive, to feel guilty, and his jealousy of his young brother comes out at different points. Lots of different things come out, but that part was part of the kernel of the story. You know, I'm sure from writing screenplays, you know what that's like, where you get the catalyst. You know,
Oh
that was
yeah.
always going to be the catalyst.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
So
great.
that one I knew. I knew the beginning. It was the ending that I was having trouble with in this one.
And were there times when you were writing it, did you just get sudden bouts of inspiration, like, oh, this would be a perfect way for this to fit into the story, but as a result of that new idea, you would have to like suddenly scrap everything that came after it, or was it just like a big thing of clay, just molding it along the way, or did you have a pretty solid sense of where things were supposed to head?
Well, I would like to say I had a solid sense, but this one really did take on a life of its own, and I ended up adding some characters that I didn't think I was going to have, who are quite important. Like Alex's supervising psychologist
Hmm.
comes in after the middle of the story, and usually that's not true for me. Usually I have all my characters, you know, on the stage right away. And but we needed her. We needed a
Hmm.
place for Alex to explore certain things. So um, this one was unusual in that respect that uh, as I would go along, things would change. It was kind of like life, I guess.
No, probably. Would you say that was it constantly changing, but you had a strong sense of where things were supposed to head, or that you were just kind of like, okay, I'm going to write, X number of words today, and maybe something that was in that would have a slight impact or maybe slight changes along the way, or was it pretty solid for most of the way through, apart from the drastically changed ending?
Yeah, it was pretty solid. And I knew that it was, in a sense, a coming of age novel for Alex,
Hmm.
that by the end of the book, she had to have moved forward from her original position, which was grief and confusion.
Hmm.
So I wanted her to find a life that suited her and that also made intrinsic sense in terms of what I'd set up in the book. I mean, I think most stories have an internal logic,
Hmm.
but you don't always know that internal logic right away.
Right, right.
I mean, some people might, but you
Right,
know,
right. I also want to ask you, as we established, on the page one, her cousin dies. I think it's very interesting to see, especially how a family, deals with that such a momentous happening in their lives. Did you have to do research? I mean, did you talk to families who had gone through that? I mean, you also said, your brother had passed away. What what was it challenging to put that kind of emotion and the emotional recovery onto the page? I mean, did you find like staring into the abyss of your of your own personal approach to it, or was it a lot more? Okay, I talked to other families who have gone through this.
Well, it's interesting that when you have a loss, you end up meeting a lot of other people that have had the same loss. It's very interesting to me. So I discovered that I had many friends who had lost a sibling
Hmm.
and talked to them about it. But I also have always had a big interest in Jungian psychology and psychology in general. And so I have done some research there. And I'm a big believer in therapy. So the whole therapeutic psychological stuff um, has been kind of a lifelong interest for me. So I would have to say both. I talked to a lot of people and I did some research, and all of that came together, I
Okay.
think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm very curious. I think the book is just about to be published, or it
Yes,
is.
tomorrow is the official publication date.
Okay, so we are recording this on Monday, March 30th. So March 31st, the official publication date. I'm very curious, what have been reactions from readers? I mean, not just beta readers, but I guess advanced readers, people who've gotten advanced copies. Just because you're saying that a lot of you found out a lot more people had the death of a sibling. I'm very curious for like families who that has happened to, or maybe families who also weathered the financial crisis. I'm sure a lot of different aspects of the book were applying to all the people who are reading it. That everyone had a different kind of reaction to all the different aspects of the book.
Well, I discovered with the advanced reviews, places like Booklist and Kirkus, and that they were very interested in the psychological layers of the book, and thought that those worked well. But actual readers, so far, because a number of people pre-ordered and then have talked to me about the book, um, they've been extremely interested in the family dynamics.
Hmm.
I would have to say that's like number one. That some people have said to me, "I want that family."
They all get along too well.
I know. And and then also again the sexuality of the different characters and the psychological aspects, those things were commented on. And several people have commented on the New Mexico landscape aspects. And that certainly from here, especially, they really enjoyed reading a novel that was set here and in an environment that they know and like.
Hmm.
So I've gotten kind of all over the map kind of comments, that's good, right?
Oh, yeah, that's always good. That's really good. So, what advice would you have for writers who are not that they're trying to put this kind of story together, but I guess for writers in general, people who want to write maybe an examination of a family, a particular kind, but also writers who I've seen a lot of stories where they try to incorporate real life events into this fictional story of a family or a character. So, what advice would you offer up for writers of that kind of nature?
Well, I think I always offer advice of, read books and study the ones that you love. And because I think often writers will read something and they'll go, I would like to write a book like that.
Hmm.
And that's true of memoirists too. They'll find a memoir and they'll think, I can write a memoir now because I see. So I always recommend that people write the book that they want to read, as well as a book like the ones they already love. Um, and then I think that you can go in a number of ways here, and you really can interview people and talk with people about the crises in their lives and how they resolve them. Because, I mean, screenplays and novels revolve around crises, so you have
Hmm.
to have some really good ones.
I, I,
So
I was going to say one of the key screenwriting stories is it's either someone goes on a journey or a stranger comes to town.
that's right. That's it, right there. Those are
Mhm.
the key American stories for
E-
sure.
Exactly. Okay, so Lynn C. Miller, your novel is The Surrogate. So the big question is, so what is up next for you? Do you have other novels in the works? Do you have some other project that you're developing?
Yes, I'm writing a novel that is based on the life of Edith Wharton, the American writer who wrote a lot about, well, she's famous for writing about the Gilded Age.
Hmm.
And I feel like since we're in a second Gilded Age, that one is of interest. And so I've written a whole draft of that novel, and it cuts back and forth between the present and a woman who is writing a stage play of The House of Mirth, which is Edith Wharton's first great work, and the life of Wharton. So it's kind of a half historical fiction and half something else. So that's what I'm working on
That's
right
great. That
now.
that is great. Lynn, thank you so much for being here today. Where can people find out more about you? I mean, we discussed earlier before we started that you have a website and that you're on some social media. So where can people find you online?
They can find me online at lyncmiller.com. And we talked about Facebook, and I'm Lynn C. Miller there too. And I also, as I said to you, do a podcast every month called The Unruly Muse. And that website is theunrulymuse.net, and that has more information about me and all the episodes of the podcast, etc.
Just a quick, so what's a quick description of the Unruly Muse? What can people expect when they go to that one?
They can expect performances of living poets and some really great music because my co-host is a musician and a wonderful sound engineer, and he works with various musicians for the show. And then they can expect fiction by me, usually a slice of a novel or a short story, and then lots of discussion of all of the it's we do a theme every month.
Hmm.
So we'll do something like freedom, or this last month we did hello, is anyone there? We live in such a weird time.
That's a great one. I love that one. That's great.
So,
Okay, so the website is lyncmiller.com, and it is Lynn C. Miller on Facebook, and the podcast, The Unruly Muse, at theunrulymuse.net. And again, we've been talking with Lynn C. Miller and her novel, The Surrogate. And people, I assume people can get the book directly from you via your website, or is it more of an Amazon or Barnes and
yeah,
Noble type of
you'll
thing?
be able to get it from Amazon, Barnes and Noble, um, the press. Certainly, they can always email me and say, ask for a signed copy if they want.
Sure. And also for recommendations of things in New Mexico.
Yes, I'd love that. I'd love
That's
that.
wonderful. All right. Well, again, Lynn C. Miller and her novel, The Surrogate, thank you so much for being here today. This was a very, very enjoyable conversation.
I loved it. I loved it. Great to meet you, Paul.
Oh, I'm very glad. And viewers and listeners, if you were glad and you enjoyed today's show, please hit like. Feel free to leave a comment and subscribe. Also, want to give a big thanks and shout out to Mark Gunyon. He is the provider of the theme music. Did you notice it at the beginning? And it'll be right up in a couple of seconds. A big thanks to Mark. We finally got some theme music on the show. For my social media, you can check out my screenwriting blog, Maximum Z. That is at maximumz.blog. This show is on Blue Sky at Podcast CWL, and I am on Blue Sky and Instagram. Both of those are at Pez Screenwriting, Pez, just like the candy. You can also check out my Go Ahead and Ask books. Those are on Amazon, the ones about screenwriting and pie. Like I said, that's Lynn. I'm Paul. This has been the Creative Writing Life podcast. Thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay healthy, and most importantly, go write something.